Hello, and welcome to The Good Leader, where we explore the aspects of good leadership and take the journey to becoming a good and effective leader. I am your host, Dr. Julie Donnelly, and I am a leadership coach. Leadership is my passion, and I'm on a mission to help you become the best leader you can be. So you feel good about your leadership skills, you feel confident, and you enjoy the leadership journey. So today's topic is, are you doing too much? It's actually a near and dear topic to me as a high achiever. I mean, look, if you're moving at 150 miles an hour, can you be a good leader or are you just busy? Sometimes we're our own worst enemy. We take on too many activities. We put entirely too much pressure on ourselves to meet unrealistic expectations or to be perfect. We may not feel comfortable or be unwilling to say no to anyone. We may be focused on people pleasing. Um, we may possess an other focused mindset rather than a self focused mindset, which in and of itself is not bad, but we can put other people's needs first without even considering our own bandwidth and what we can manage or our own needs. So the reality is that if we are putting too much pressure on ourselves to produce, we can be contributing to our own overwhelm and burnout. So, what are you spending your time doing? Maybe you are just simply doing too much. As a leader, it's important for your team to see you as competent and capable, not, running around like a chicken with its head cut off, right? So, how you handle yourself matters greatly, especially when you're a leader. You want to appear to your team that you're in control of yourself and your workload and that you can manage it. Leaders have to manage both the appearances and manage expectations that people have of them. And so by doing so, the leader instills a sense of confidence and trust in them. So through our actions, you communicate the message, I got this. And people feel safe and sense that you really do have the lead. But if you're frantic, if you're busy, if you're chaotic and frustrated and stressed out, and you lack time to take care of yourself and or your staff, then they interpret this to mean that you're not in charge, that you don't have control, and then they absorb that frustration and stress, and they can become stressed out too. So you wind up creating a very frantic, unsettled work environment and morale suffers. Good leadership starts with leading yourself. So the first step here is to diagnose the problem so you can create an action plan. And that'll be step two. So the first step is to just make a list of your to do items, which you probably already have. So we just want to look at what's on your plate and ask yourself the following questions. First, what can you prioritize for later? Sometimes we feel like what's in our plate has to be done right now, when that deadline might be self-imposed and very unrealistic. So consider what needs to be done right now and what could be done later. Second, are you struggling with perfectionism? Is perfectionism an issue for you? What's the struggle there? Consider what perfection means to you, because the reality is that perfection is an illusion and it leads to stress. It doesn't really exist. So in your mind it means something. What does it mean to you? All right. Third, perhaps you have things on your plate that are completely left that you've left unfinished. So this is important. What are those things on your plate that you've started that you just haven't gotten to? Are you one of those people who start things but don't follow through? Or you get distracted? And especially in healthcare, there's so many things thrown at us. It's very easy to get distracted and not finish. But the time that it takes you to come back and finish that thing, you've moved on to other things. So you have all these uncompleted tasks. And the organizational guru, David Allen, his book is Getting Things Done. He says that one of the top sources of stress are unfinished tasks. So take a look at that. That would be important for you to know. The fourth thing is, what can you give up altogether? What are the things on your list that if you didn't do it, nobody would care? Why are those things being done? Um, so perhaps you're doing things that used to be important, or perhaps you're doing things that at some point you thought were important, but now that you've been doing them for a while, they're just not. So the question really is, what can you dump altogether? What can you just eliminate and not do at all? For example, in my experience as an executive nurse, when I started, there were several audits that had to be done. I was told that had to be done or that were being done. And so I did those regularly. And when I looked at my list, I realized that those audits took a lot of time. I had to track things down and, obviously we still had paper charts at the time, check the chart and dig through material. And it was very time consuming. And what I realized was that many of those were nice to have. At one point, they needed to be done. But at this point in time, they did no longer needed to be done. The ones I liked, I created a schedule for. Maybe I did some annually because I wanted to make sure we were maintaining that. Others needed to be done quarterly. And then the ones that I could eliminate altogether, they got eliminated. And nobody asked me about them. So this is a good question for you to ask yourself. Is what you're doing on your list, is it something that really needs to be done still? Or is it something that you can get rid of? The fifth question is, are you the best person for the job? This is a question you should ask yourself consistently with anything that is being asked of you. Ask yourself, why are you doing this? And there are two areas of interest here. One is, who might you delegate to? Who on your team could step up and do this activity? Are you using your staff wisely? And if not, what's that about for you? We need to have a conversation. What stops you from delegating? So that's a big area of inquiry. The other area of interest is whether you're doing other people's work. So perhaps there is someone in another department, a colleague, or a colleague who would be better suited to get the job done. If you're the person that people know that they can give things to get things done, then you could be getting dumped on. And if you don't say no, then you're just doing it. You're taking it on. You may need to learn to say no to things, projects, people, um, in order to make a better, um, to take control of your schedule. Are you showboating? Are you wanting to validate how good or how capable you are? Are you volunteering too much? Take an ego check. If you're not delegating as you should, if you're doing other people's work, if you suffer from perfection paralysis, then your ego is getting in the way. And there's no judgment here. Please know that most of these things I've experienced myself, and we all have different areas where we need to learn to and grow and develop and do better. So there's no judgment. Just explore and become more familiar with how you are behaving and whether it is adding to your life or fueling the burnout. So you may want the responsibility, you may want to people please or look good to others, feel needed, feel in control, be in control of things. And the question is, there's a couple questions here. What is it that you gain by taking on all of this extra work? How does it serve you? What role does it play in your life? And then what is it costing you? That's a really important exploration and one that we probably need to do more often. The reality is that effective leaders lead others. They do not work themselves frantic. They learn to utilize and maximize their human resources, their human capital, and they get the work done through others. So, step one focused on exploring the relationship you have with your to do list, looking at what's on your plate and why you're choosing, why you're doing it, why you are doing it. The second step is creating a care plan. I'm a nurse, so we do care plans. First, once you identify the answers to each one, you understand why you're doing it and the purpose of it, and you can't eliminate it. So then you start to identify what you're going to do with each of those items on your list. If it's something that has to be completed, okay, then what? Are you the best person for the job? Is there someone else who should be responsible? It may mean working through it yourself this time, but thinking about who can do it next time, or not accept it if it's offered in the future. This can be a tricky experience, so please let me know if you need help in navigating this. One of the things that I did with my audits, for example, is the ones that if I'm the leader and I'm doing the audits, then you as the staff are not learning how to look for those things and what it should look like. I'm just giving you a report that, hey, these things weren't done to par, or these things were, that kind of thing. So what I did is I actually did set up the audits and I turned it over to the staff and then would ask them to do different tasks. And that way we got it done together as a team. So think about creative ways to get some of the things done on your to-do list. They're all going to look different. So it does take a little bit of time to work through it. All right. The second thing, for each new assignment or to-do item, you're asked to do something. Consider whether you are the best person for the job. Stay in your lane and do not take responsibility for work that other people should be responsible for. There are other questions you can ask yourself, like what your timeline is like, whether you have the time to get that done in the time frame that that person wants, and just all those other questions to kind of get a handle on how you're spending your time and how much time things take for you to do. The third thing is to delegate effectively. And this is just crucial for staff development, for engaging your team member, and building effective teams, each person being responsible for different elements of the work. We'll talk about this in more detail in a later video, but identifying if you have a struggle with delegating will be the most important thing that you get from this today, because then you know that what to do, that's something that you need to work on. If you struggle with perfectionism, the only thing I can say to that is give it up. It's a stressor that you can live without. You can adopt an 80-20 rule. In other words, if it's 80% good, then it's good enough to be perfectly imperfect. And that's what we're looking for. And then once you put it out there, if it needs, it's kind of like the procedure. You write the procedure, you've looked at the regulations, you've done your due diligence, it's as good as it's going to get, and you just put it out there. And then when you start doing it in real life, you realize that you have to make some adjustments. Okay, great. So just fix it as you go. Let go of that perfection. It has to be perfect before you act. Just get comfortable with making adjustments and course correcting. While there's some things that where compromise is not an option, such as patient care, there are many things where perfectionism just hurts and it does nothing to serve you or anyone. And as I mentioned before, the time that it takes for you to get from that 80% to near perfect, whatever perfect looks like, if you can even define perfect, is actually worse. That little bit of extra improvement is not worth the time, the effort, and the delay that it costs whatever you're delivering. Another thing is to be fully present. This is a biggie because when you're running at 150 miles an hour, it's really hard to just be in the moment. And so, whatever you're choosing to do with your time, you're choosing to go to that meeting, you're choosing to spend time with your staff, or you're choosing to do a project, just focus your attention on that particular item. This is difficult sometimes when you're, as I mentioned, running so fast. But if you harness the power of focus, you get it done, you're fully present, and you're experiencing whatever it is that you're doing. And that's sort of the whole thing that life is all about, right? So it's much more important concept than we give. It's not just about checking off things on the box on the to-do list. And lastly, for this lesson, this was a big learning for me. Just learn to do less, to slow down. This is so hard. I spent 2 years with slowing down as my theme. And I still think about it. And it's still part of what my evolution and my development. I'm a high achiever, and high achievers were used to running at top speed and getting it done, but it does not add value. And it hurts relationships because it makes you distant. You're so busy with tasks that you just don't have time for people. And we know that as leaders, human resources and time with our staff is the most important thing. It's one of the most important elements of leading. I mean, what are you leading if you're not leading people? So, as a leader, you need space to think and process and reflect and prioritize, to take care of yourself, to meditate, to reflect and refine your practice. So when you adopt a more appropriate pace for your work and your life, you can actually enjoy yourself. It's really, really hard to enjoy the work when you're running at 150 miles an hour. Good leaders are purposeful and intentional. So this week, examine your to do items and see what you can complete, get off your plate, what you can delegate, what you can give away, and what you can just dump. Explore the questions asked in this video and the reasons behind why you're doing what you're doing. What assumptions or beliefs do you have about how things get accomplished? I highly recommend you keep a journal and reflect upon your leadership journey and let me know how you're doing. This work that we covered today is not easy work, but you'll feel so relieved when you can get a handle on your to-do items. And, um, by all means, reach out to me if I can assist you in any way. You can find me online at drjuliedonnelly.com. Please place your comments or questions below, and I will certainly address any questions that you have in future videos. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss anything. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Make it a great week.